never stop believing, always have a desire, always have a plan. Our plans may not necessarily always pan out, but as long as you have the desire and the push and the drive, you will create an opportunity for yourself where you can make those decisions.
You're listening to the Building Better Futures podcast, where innovation meets inspiration. In each episode, host Eric Hurani journeys alongside notable thought leaders who are shaping the future, cultivating exceptional work cultures, and nurturing the next generation of trailblazers. We aim to spark inspiration by engaging in dialogue with leaders from groundbreaking companies, innovative projects, and exceptional teams. Our goal is to empower individuals to positively impact those around them and leave a lasting legacy of positive change in our communities and society at large. Let's dive in together and explore what it takes to build better futures, one conversation at a time.
Today I'm joined by Oscar Gonzalez, CCM and Senior Assistant Vice President of Capital Development with New York City's Health and Hospitals. Oscar joined H&H in 2019 and has over 22 years of experience in managing small and large capital projects and portfolios system-wide in a variety of environments citywide. H&H has a footprint of about 20 million square feet of space, which includes 11 acute campuses, 5 post-acute facilities, and dozens of primary care clinics under Gotham. Oscar, thanks for taking the time to talk to me today. Before we get to the core conversation, I always like to start with good news and gratitude. Are there any personal or professional good news or gratitudes you'd like to share with me or the audience?
Good morning, Eric. Thank you for this opportunity to join you. Yes, loads of gratitude. We have had an amazing run here at Health and Hospitals. I joined here 5 years, and we've been able to really expand and establish a very strong capital program. And this past year, we were able to meet 100% of our commitment goal. So everything that we forecasted, we were able to push through, and we made 100% commitment. So that was our most recent goal.
That's really exciting, Oscar. I'm glad that you guys were able to meet your goals, and I'm sure with people like you pushing forward, that's very possible for the organization. So exciting. My gratitudes on show day are always to the guest. You have an extremely busy schedule. You're working on, I think, over 400 capital projects. So, I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today. So start the conversation. Tell us about yourself. Tell us about, where'd you grow up, college, life before H&H? Tell us anything you'd like to share.
That's a very long history there. So let me try and sum it up real quick. So definitely a proud New Yorker. Graduated college in 3 different concentrations. I studied aviation, I studied engineering, and I studied business management. So I am also a pilot by trade. So that was my original passion. Did study aerospace engineering, and then finished it up with business. So I after I graduated, went over to try and pursue an aviation career, but then quickly pivoted and worked for a contractor for a little bit and a consultant. My previous endeavor was at DVC as assistant commissioner for public buildings. And then fast forward to today, here at Health and Hospitals for the last 5 years, trying to implement and grow the program.
Very cool. So I'm going to ask you totally off the cuff question because I had no idea you were going to say you were a pilot. So have you flown like by yourself or have you been trained, or what do you mean by you're a pilot? I just need to know more.
Yeah. No, I received every single license there is except for my airline license. So I got my private, commercial, instrument, multi-engine. I was a flight instructor as well, both for single and multi-engines. So yes, I have flown many hours. I used to fly actually doing tours here in New York, and I had some students as well. So that was my passion, but it is a very tough, grueling career to try and pursue. So I quickly made the pivot and focused more on the engineering and the project.
Very cool. I could get sidetracked by this whole conversation, but I'm only going to ask one question and then I'll move on. What's the furthest distance you've flown? What was like the longest flight time?
So I did a lot of my training in Oklahoma. So I flew, Oklahoma, Texas, Arkansas, Kansas, Missouri, Colorado. The furthest that I've flown from here, from New York, was probably in a single engine up to Albany and back. So it doesn't seem very far, but it is a single engine plane. It's like getting in the
Yeah,
car.
yeah. It's really cool, man. I love, and that's what I love doing. I learned so much about people that I never knew. Like, in all of our conversations, I don't think that's ever come up. So, all right, we'll get back to this, but I think that's really interesting. And congrats on that. I mean, a wide variety of skills you have. And, I love the whole concept of like lifelong learner. And it feels like you're like that. You've obviously loved to learn and done a lot. So that's really cool. Back to being a lifelong New Yorker, I am as well. And it's one of the things I really love about what we do as an industry is helping build the city that we love, right? So I know under HHC, you're managing over 400 capital projects. That's got to be a lot of coordination and a lot of communication. Are there any strategies or tips you want to share with like me and the audience about how do you do that effectively? Because many of us probably feel overwhelmed sometimes when we get a handful of projects, let alone hundreds of projects.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Sometimes we have to we kind of jump in, but we have to step back a little bit. Where we may not necessarily, as leaders of a group, a division, a department, we may not necessarily have to be involved in every nut and bolt, but we have to see the entire factory line really working together, and understanding where the gaps are, understanding what the successes are, really setting the goals, the plans, understanding what the finances are. The finances are everything. But even if you have all of the money in the world, how are you going to get it done? So resources are important, standards, procedures, policies. So one of the first things that I do when I come into an organization is I try to understand, I listen and I try to understand what works and what doesn't, where the gaps are and where do we really want to be, and try and map out a strategy on how to get there. So 5 years ago, my strategy was, understand everything and hope that in 4 to 5 years time that we would be able to make that 100% commitment goal, which we have. And that's key. It does, there are very painful conversations sometimes, some hard conversations. But you rely on your team, if you rely on your resources, if you really believe in yourself that you can make it, more than likely, you'll have an opportunity.
I love that advice, and it's especially practical for me because I've kind of been on that journey for the last few years. We've been building up our team and instituting like operating process and procedures and trying to standardize things across the board. And like you said, it's a challenge, and there are some tough conversations that need to occur. But in the end, I'm like, I wake up every day so like excited and happy to go to work because I know I'm surrounded by people that care and want to do a good job and that I can work with and bounce ideas off of. And it sounds like you're having a great and similar experience at HHC, and congratulations on accomplishing that and meeting your goals. I know we talked about that earlier.
Thank you.
So that's, a little bit about the current, leadership and management. But as you look to the future, right, healthcare is constantly evolving. What do you see as like the biggest opportunities and challenges, and how are you going to prepare your team for that, right, the future?
Yeah, that's what kind of makes us unique, right? It's really the unknown. Prior to COVID, we didn't know that we were going to have COVID, but yeah, we have to have the flexibility to be able to pivot and still provide the care to the community. I mean, that's not a choice, right? We have to keep our doors open. We have to keep the lights on, and whatever comes our way, we have to be able to mold and provide a solution to the problem. So, flexibility, that's really, I think the key element out of, managing the portfolio and managing the organization. We work with a lot of doctors, a lot of nurses, and they are constantly talking about this flexibility, the search space, as an example, we have an ED works a certain way, but now we're going to have another local hospital is going to be closing down, so we're going to have a big surge of patients coming in. What do we do? So all of these things are constantly getting looked at. But the idea is really to have that flexibility for us to be able for us to pivot and be able to respond. I mean, we had Sandy 12 years ago. We didn't know we were going to have a tsunami. Again, back to COVID. We didn't know we were going to have COVID. We didn't know we were going to have Ebola. We didn't know we were going to have Hurricane Ida and Ophelia to deal with. We have a very aging infrastructure. So, what do we have to do to be able to continue to have those lights on and those doors open? It's a constant thing that we talk about every single day.
Yeah, the unknown unknowns, right? Hardest things to plan for and
Yeah.
greatest challenges we face typically. Because even if you think you've thought of everything, the world will figure out a way to show you something you didn't think about.
It's a constant test, that's for sure. But we're resilient, and we know what the objective is, and that's to shelter in place. And like I said, we got to continue to provide services to the community. So we just got to figure it out.
Yeah. Well, I love the idea of flexibility, and sometimes it's hard to get your a team to kind of believe in that mantra, right? Because maybe they've been working on something every day, right, in a certain way, and all of a sudden things just completely change. You got to kind of give them that flexibility, and you're in a unique position because you have your team at HHC, but then you also have, like you said, your user partners, right? Your doctors and your nurses that are actually the end users. And then you probably have your consultants, the architects, engineers, contractors that are working on your program. And then you have the city or whatever funding entity you have, right? So, as you're trying to figure out flexibility from them, and I'm going to focus on the AEC because that's primarily where I'm coming from. How can we help you in that? What are you seeing from architects or engineers or contractors to allow for flexibility in the spaces you're designing or working on?
That's another great question. Sometimes as the New Yorkers, and you can be sympathetic to this. We're like in a bubble, right? If it happens in New York, it can happen anywhere, and this is the only place that things happen, and we don't really focus on other areas, the rest of the country and other places internationally where they've been successful with healthcare. A lot of the problems that happen here happen everywhere else. So why can't we implement some of these things? As a city employee, public servant, we have to deal with a lot of city bureaucracy. There's a lot of laws. There's a lot of responsibilities when it comes to the taxpayers because we, even though we generate our own revenue, we do get subsidized by the city. So, we're able to do our own general obligations bonds. If the city is kind of situation, we can do our own bonds. We're not necessarily an agency, but we're really more of a public entity. So we do have a lot of flexibility within our own limitations and our rules and policies. General municipal law gives us the same flexibility. The city gives us some flexibility. And you kind of give the team, right? Flexibility. What do I expect from the architects, engineers? Also to figure out ways to incorporate that flexibility. While we are experts in our own field, we're doctors, we're nurses, we're providing our core business, which is clinical services to the community. We're not a design and construction. Now, I may know a lot about design and construction, and I may have a small team that knows a lot about design and construction, but we are still just the owners really providing a pathway to provide good solutions for our end users. So you, as a engineer and contractors, you guys are the experts. You guys have experienced a lot. And you're maybe only doing work here in New York, but a lot of vendors are also doing work in Texas, California, Alaska. It doesn't really matter, okay? But there's a lot of places that there's some great solutions. I gave an example of an emergency department. An emergency department is actually an emergency department where we should open up doors and let people in. It's how it flows, how it works, the technology that's in there, the staff, how do they monitor, how they provide the services, how do they efficiently get you in and get you out or get you into another place into the department. All of those ideas, all those innovative solutions should come from the architects, the engineers, and kind of forecast and foresee what trials and tribulations the contractor may have. So if all of that can be coordinated, that's going to really help us, execute a lot of the work effectively.
Very cool. I like what you said about kind of globally and even domestically, right? But outside of New York City, that the challenges faced by the healthcare system are propagated through all those regions. Is there any like technology or innovation you're like particularly excited about that maybe you've seen like internationally or even here in America, but in other cities or states that like you're hoping can be implemented or you're looking to implement in the next couple of years with the HHC?
Yeah. So, I mean, technology is huge. The private industry is it's a little bit ahead of us when it comes to technology. Some things we have to do regardless. I love our IT folks. We call them EITS, Enterprise Information Technology Services. And we have to have the latest because our information is so sensitive. We have medical records that we have to ultimately protect from anybody, but yet we still have to have access to the systems. And all of our technology, all of our servers and computers and all that stuff, all of that can connect to the beds and the monitoring devices, and you can download all that information. So just to be able to obtain and collect data throughout the system is mind-boggling. Some of the interesting projects that I've been working on recently is the Da Vinci robots to be able to provide surgeries through, with robotic technology. Today, the doctors can do it with a little joystick. I'm not sure exactly how it works, but they're in there doing the surgery, but they're somewhere nearby. Tomorrow, I don't know, maybe they can work remotely and they can do it from their own couch in their own home. I mean, I think that's an amazing in itself. We have a lot of carousel, like sort of like vending machines for pharmaceuticals. So, we're implementing that system wide. I think that's another amazing technology. And then probably the one thing to really point out is, I mentioned private is a little bit ahead of us, but they also focus on their own stuff. They focus mainly on specialty services. For them, it's mostly about the bottom line. For us, we're not competing with private, and it's not really about the bottom line. We're more of a safety net for the city of New York. So essentially, all of those services that the private does not do, we do. If there's any way to incorporate newer technologies into some of those services, whether it's behavioral health, whether it's for the undocumented, or uninsured, that would go a really long way.
So I have a lot I want to unpack in that answer actually, because you reminded me of a few topics. So one is to just say thank you to you and the organization for what you do, because you're right. It's not about the bottom line for what you guys do, and it is about helping the people and the public. And in a lot of ways, and this may feel controversial, but I hope that everyone can get the healthcare they need when they need it. Right? That I think hopefully is a belief that we can all have. So thank you guys for doing that. Another thing, and again, may seem controversial, but I tend to read a lot, just like random articles, and I've read a few over the last week about how private equity is really hurting the patient experience part of healthcare, because there's a lot of private equity going into healthcare. So that's just been a challenge that I think is reoccurring here and happening. But the question I wanted to ask you was around something you said related to the robots and the technology and all that kind of stuff. And it's a quote that I really like. And I think it's Bill Gates. And he says, we overestimate what we can accomplish in 1 year and we underestimate what we can accomplish in 10 years. And I feel like robots doing surgery is a great example of that. Like if you had told me that 10 years ago, I'd been like, what are you, crazy? Or something? But now we're probably thinking like, oh, they should be able to do this in the next 6 months. And then it'll probably still take longer than that, But have you found what about AI and how that's kind of being integrated into technology and innovation in healthcare? Is there anything you guys are looking at in that space? Again, I do a lot of reading, and AI is just such a hot topic. Every couple of articles I read, something about AI sneaks its way in there. So
Yeah. So I am not personally doing much in AI, but I know the organization is. So have been looking at certain programs. They've been looking at certain processes, policies where AI could actually be supportive. So we have reached out to some of the AI firms to help us out. But this is more on the clinical side, and they are definitely supportive. So we're not quite there yet, but we're definitely looking.
Making your way there. Very cool. Yeah, and I think a lot of organizations are at that point. Like full disclosure. I'm taking a course right now, an AI course, and I find it very interesting. And it's about how to apply AI in business. And they talk about like do small projects, get small wins, because your whole company can't change overnight. It's just not possible. Um, but it's important to be aware and looking, and it sounds like you guys are doing that. Very cool. So, all right. Well, I want to circle back to, we've talked about some projects, we've talked about some technology, we've talked about the vast portfolio you have, but I know you've had an incredible career yourself, and I want you to share with us, is there like one or two projects that sticks out in your mind, especially with like healthcare is like, you're impacting people's lives directly, and that's got to be an amazing feeling. So I'm sure, whether it was now or you mentioned your time with DDC, and I didn't even know, but it sounds like you had a time with a contractor before that and a consultant as well. So I don't know, any one or two projects during that career that really excite you and you're just so proud that you were able to help the city and the people and the public?
So many projects. There are so many projects. I am going to mention two things. So currently in H&H, the largest project / program that we're self-managing. So we self-manage now today. We didn't always self-manage. We would have the likes of DDC, EDC, DASNY, NYPA, that they would do a lot of the capital work for us. Today we self-manage, but we're careful and to pick the right project. If it's a brand new building, that may be a little bit too much because our team is very small and we're very lean. If it's a project that's externally facing, like flood wall, we may tap into our friends at EDC or DDC to help us with all the other city agencies like DOT and OCME and whoever else is necessarily involved. But there is one particular program that we are self-managing. It is called the acronym is OTXHU. It stands for Outposted Therapeutic Housing Units. It is a derivative or an extension of the borough-based jails program that DDC is managing, the Department of Design and Construction. And that program is essentially to provide spaces within our hospitals to be able to provide long-term acute care to the incarcerated, to the folks that are going to be in those prisons. As an example, if they need chemotherapy, you can't get chemotherapy necessarily in a day. They would come to us until they're feeling better. If they need dialysis, they would come until they feel better, and then they would go back. So that's that program in itself. It's several hundreds of millions of dollars. We are about to open up, or we're finishing up the construction for our one location at Bellevue, and we're kicking off the other two locations at Woodhull and NCB. And those are slated to be open at the end of 2027, as of the targets right now. So again, those are very large programs being implemented within our own space. So the high security, they're essentially jails within our own hospitals, which makes it very, very, very. So I'm very proud of that program, which is being led by my senior director, Lou Mendez, which was also part of the Build It Back program many years ago. And before that, the World Trade Center. Another really good accomplishment that I feel very proud about is the work that we're doing at Far Rockaway. The work that I've done at Far Rockaway back from my DDC days. We started designing a library. We finished the library. We opened up the library out to the community. There was a fire department as well. And today we are working on a design build project to incorporate a primary care clinic for the community. So there is a large overall program to really provide this very starved community services and everything that they need. So I'm very proud of it.
Amazing. Those are two great programs. And I actually I'm a little familiar with the OTXHU program. And it's got to be challenging, like you said, right? From a security standpoint, you're bringing prisoners right into an active hospital space. I'm sure that's difficult to manage, but again, getting care to maybe the underprivileged or people that might not be able to get it otherwise, which is great. What about the next, let's call it 5 or 10 years? Anything on the capital plan roadmap you're like particularly excited about or really looking forward to getting to get up and running?
Yeah, I mean, we got loads. As I mentioned, as you mentioned, actually, we have over 400 active projects today. It's about a $7-8 billion program, and a lot of those are somewhere in the transition. Either we're finishing up construction, or we're finishing up design. Some few of them are being started, or they're being finishing. We're finishing the planning and starting design. But we are rolling out with the next. How many is it? I think it's probably another 150 projects
Oh, wow.
under our own health and hospitals funds. So we are still in the process of working with the banks, working with our board. Hopefully we get board approval. Once we do this spring, we'll be kicking off a lot of projects there. Most of the projects are infrastructure. As I mentioned earlier, our infrastructure needs a lot of TLC and needs a lot of upgrade, but nobody really wants to invest into infrastructure. So we just have to figure it out, use duct tape, use whatever we got to do to just keep the buildings operational. But there are things that we have to replace. We have to replace boilers, we have to replace generators, we have to replace upgrade elevators. I mean, the patients still have to be able to get around the facility. So a lot of the projects are going to be infrastructure related. There are going to be some clinical projects, and where we're going to be expanding or more centralizing our services. So a lot of outpatient rehabilitation projects. We are working on cath lab projects and doing upgrades. There's all different types of cath lab services. So we're working on that. We are working on community pharmacies as well. So we're not necessarily trying to compete with the CVSs and the Walgreens of the world, but we do have our own patients that require medicine. So if they're coming in, they can pick up their medicine on the way out. So we're implementing some of those as well, and a few other clinical type programs, more so infrastructure than clinical, but there is a lot of projects that we're kicking off, and we have to try and finish them, anywhere between the next 3 to 5 years.
Sounds really exciting, and I will say in terms of the TLC you mentioned, there's a lot of agencies and just across the city and state we need that, and I always like to, you know, advocate for anyone listening or whoever can, but, make sure we're writing to our public officials about that. It's really important that we get the appropriate funding into infrastructure, and, we had Johnny Evers on an episode, a few episodes ago. He's the head of ACEC. I don't know if you're familiar with him or not, but he and I spoke about this at length because it's really important. I mean, I don't know, but I'm glad that you guys are. It sounds like pushing through, and you're going to figure out ways to be resourceful and get it done. And so, thank you for that.
Yeah, and it's a balance. It's a balance between the infrastructure that we need, but we still have to provide the clinical
Yeah,
services as well. So we have to prioritize some of the infrastructure work, prioritize some of the clinical work, and we have to try and make sense of how we're delivering this work. So if we're going to be working in a certain area, it may just make sense to do possibly both together, infrastructure and clinic. So if I have to upgrade an MRI, for example, do I just bring in a brand new unit, or do I upgrade the entire suite, or do I upgrade the entire infrastructure that's around that suite as well? So these are the planning aspects that we have to thoroughly think about.
real big picture planning. Yeah, that's interesting, right? It's not just the equipment, but or is it just the equipment, right? I guess sometimes that's the answer too. It's like, hey, this is all we can do right now, so let's do it.
Yeah, sure.
I'm going to transition us to the part of the show where we try to inspire the next generation. And to start that, because you mentioned, and when you were telling us about yourself, a little bit about the earlier parts of your career, it sounded like you worked for a consultant and contractor. Just give us a little bit more background on that. What were you doing? And, I'm assuming that was also in New York.
Oh, when I worked as a contractor?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, I was prepared, but I've been very lucky as well. So, as a proud New Yorker, I've been able to give back and participate in some amazing projects. So I've worked on, for example, the Williamsburg Bridge, the Brooklyn Bridge. I worked upstate on the old Tappan Zee Bridge, today known as the Maricomo Bridge. I worked on TBTA projects, tunnel projects. I've worked on Long Island Railroad as well. And a lot of roadway projects, so DOT and DEP projects. Then kind of transitioned off that and went on to becoming a consultant. Again, wide variety of different consulting agencies. But when I landed at BDC, that's when I got to really get exposed to a lot of the public entities, libraries, homeless shelters, DCAS. I mean, there's just so many different, I think it was a total of 26 or 28 agencies across the city that all have a different variety of needs, and, delivering those projects, they're all very different. Everybody has different standards, different ideas, different teams or capital teams. So, working in such diversity really gives you an open mind as to, how it all kind of unfolds. So, it's been a very, very interesting career. I've always wanted to give back to New York City. Everybody that I grew up with, all my friends, they all left. They're in Florida, Texas, California. I stayed behind, and I am very proud that I got to participate in beautifying the city of New York.
That's great. And so I wanted to hear a little bit about the early part of your career, because obviously you're successful and you've done an incredible job. And but as someone that's maybe just entering the industry or is just a student, it can sometimes feel daunting, right? So I think hearing a little bit about the early journey, right? It sounds like you worked all over the place and you got all kinds of experiences, and it wasn't that you just knew from day one exactly what you wanted to do. And so with that, like, kind of line of thinking, is there like any advice that you thought really carried you through the first few years of your career, and like how you made good decisions that would be good for some of the younger, like, members of the audience or earlier career members of the audience that are listening, that you want to share with them?
Never stop believing. Never stop believing. Always have a desire. Always have a plan. Our plans may not necessarily always pan out. But as long as you have the desire and the push and the drive, you will create an opportunity for yourself where you can make those decisions. I myself was prepared. I finished school. I had my desires, but I also had an opportunity to pivot. And I ended up having a good career. So, we don't stop trying. We don't quit. Things are not just going to land in our hands. At the end of the day, it's about all the efforts that we, give ourselves, and the way that we push ourselves. That's what will eventually get us there.
I love it. Never stop believing. Don't quit. And then it takes us back to what you said earlier in the episode, like flexibility, right? I think the famous Mike Tyson quote, right? Everyone's got a plan till they get punched in the mouth. And then how are you going to adapt and figure out what the rest of your career journey is going to be? But to remember not to give up, right? Very cool. So, and you might have just shared it there, but I'll just open up in case there's anything specific. But I've mentioned during the episode, and I just gave you guys another quote that I really like. But I'm like a quote guy, and so I always like to. Do you have like a favorite quote or a mantra you like to share with people, or that you live by?
I guess that was it, really. Just never
Sure.
stop
Yeah,
believing.
no, I think you got it. I thought
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
do that with song quotes sometimes too, like, which I think is interesting. So like when you said "Don't stop believing," I
Oh,
immediately
that's
the
right.
journey. I was like, that's the quote. I love it. It's great. All right, cool. All right, let's jump into our lightning round, and then we'll wrap this thing up in a couple of minutes. So I'm just gonna ask you some quick fire questions, and you tell me the first thing that comes to mind. So what's your favorite season?
Right.
Spring? And is it you like to do something, or you just like that the weather is nice and you can go out? Like, are you a hiking type of person? Is that, I know a lot of my
I
friends.
am I
Yeah?
am very outdoors person. Yes.
Cool. So the spring is
Very.
awesome.
Yeah. Mhm.
That's awesome. All right. If you did, and I know managing 400 projects, you may not have the time, but where did you go on your last vacation?
Where did I go on my last vacation? So it just happens that I'm going to be going there in a couple of weeks. I've been to a little place called Saint Hippolyte, which is about an hour and a half west of Montreal in the winter. So I'm a four season type of guy. So I like all four seasons, but if I had to pick one, I'd pick spring. but I do enjoy winter as well, very much so. So when I last went to Canada, it was 26 below zero,
Wow.
and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Got to do the dog sleds and the frozen lake ice skating, tubing, cross country skiing, and things like that. So uh, that was really enjoyable.
Very cool. What did you call it? Saint Hippolyte? Is that what you said?
Saint Hippolyte. It's
Hippolyte.
near a place called Saint Jerome. If you ever want to look it up, it's up in the mountains outside of Montreal.
Yeah, I love doing stuff like that. I haven't been to Canada in a long time, but like when we were younger, not kids, but younger, we went to a Mount Tremblant to ski and snowboard. And that was like amazing. And so I think those little villages outside of Montreal are just beautiful. So
Origin.
I may look that up. That could be really cool. So I don't know if you do speak another language, but if you do, what is your favorite word in another language?
So I speak Spanish.
Okay.
My family's from Colombia.
I should say favorite appropriate word.
Yes. And I want to say probably the favorite word that we use is parce,
And what does it mean?
which it means like homie.
Oh, nice.
Mhm.
That's very cool.
Or,
And then,
like dude or homie, like when you're talking to somebody.
oh,
other
it's like
person.
your friend. Oh, I thought you meant homie, like I feel at home. Oh, it's like your
No.
friend. Oh, that's cool.
It's like your friend. Yes. So
Yeah.
it's like dude,
Very cool. Wait, what was the word again?
parce,
Parse. How do you spell it?
PARC.
PARC. Okay. Next time I see you, I'm gonna try to.
Hey, parce. Good.
And last thing, favorite breakfast item.
I'm not much of a breakfast person.
All right, lunch. Give me your favorite lunch item.
Ramen.
Really?
Yeah, I'm a big ramen. I love it. I'm a sweet guy.
If you have any suggestions for good ramen spots in the city, please send them to me. I will take my wife, and it'll make her happy. It'll make me happy because she's happy.
Perfect.
Send them my way. But well, with that, I want to give you an opportunity. Anything else you would like to say or share with the audience before we sign off here?
Yeah, no, this is a great opportunity for us to, get to know each other a little bit, have a little bit of a chat. And, we here at Health Hospitals continue to advocate and promote the organization. We were definitely under the radar for many, many years. And today we have a very big footprint in the city of New York. We have a lot of different efforts, a lot of things that we didn't talk about, like FEMA program and decarbonization, the reducing carbon footprint. But I did mention, we have to provide that continued service, and we are not going anywhere. So we have to expand our capital program. We're always going to have projects. We're always going to have needs. We're going to have resources, and we're always going to need services and the support from our engineers and our architects and our contractors who really support us. So definitely looking forward for continued business.
Well, thank you for that. And thank you for the opportunities. And HHC has been a great partner on the projects that we've worked with. But I also know industry-wide, everyone enjoys and appreciates the opportunities that you guys put out. Thank you again on behalf of just the city and the people that use the facilities. I mean, I think what you do is probably so valuable in people's lives. And you probably don't even see it, right, going in day to day. And then I just, I think you should be so proud. It sounds like a few years ago, you went from maybe very little self-managed, if any, to it sounds like you're really pushing that part of the group forward and taking a leadership role. And that's exciting. And I know you still have your partners and people that you're working with, but still to do that is no easy task. So congratulations to you and your team on accomplishing that. And with that, that's all the time we have for today. So we'll include links to any of the resources we mentioned in today's show's notes. And thanks again for listening, everybody, and keep an eye out for our next episode. Thanks again, Oscar.
Thank you, Eric. Until next time.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Building Better Futures. The show notes include links to any resources mentioned in today's show. If you're enjoying our podcast, please subscribe so you never miss an episode and leave us a 5-star review. This episode is brought to you by Infinite Consulting Corp., your go-to firm for MBE certified project and construction management consulting. Discover how Infinite can help you build a better future at infiniteconsultingcorp.com.